All right. There was a marker over here that worked. All right, good afternoon, guys. I misplaced my water bottle. Roland, will you see if my water bottle is back there by the lunch bag, please? All right, thank you. Excuse me real quick while I get a drink of water. All right, we are continuing on with our discussion about compound complex sentences. Will someone please tell me what is a compound complex sentence? What does that mean? We have the two parts, remember? We have compound and complex. Now, I'll remind you again that the structures of sentences are the organization of the clauses. So let's think of it that way. We talked about this last week. Let's review this. What types of clauses are you going to find in a compound sentence? Clauses are either independent or dependent. What types of clauses are you going to find in a compound sentence, Roland?
Clauses you find in a compound sentence will two independent clauses and at least one dependent clause.
Okay, in a compound complex sentence, yes, there will be at least two independent clauses, at least two independent clauses, and at least one dependent clause. That is very good. I did ask just about compound, but you went ahead and jumped ahead and told us the whole thing. So good. Independent clause means what? I know my first years know this. If it's an independent clause, what do we know about it? Here, I didn't do this last week, but let's go ahead and do it this week.
Yes, really. It's not right. Yeah, tell her. It is. Yes, yes. Okay.
All right, so tell me.
Independent clauses. Yes. Tell her.
Nice and loud, Olivia.
Stand alone.
Independent clauses stand alone. Very good. They can make complete sense by themselves. Unlike dependent or subordinate clauses, which have to be attached to an independent clause in order for them to make complete sense. Very, very good. Now, let's review again. If it's compound, that means the compound in a compound sentence is joined by a what? Arabella, do you remember compound sentences? What do we use to join the independent clauses? Coordinating conjunctions. Excellent. And what are the coordinating conjunctions? Let's bring in some foundations review. What are the coordinating conjunctions? Does anybody remember the cool hat? Come on, guys, give it to me. Bad. What is it?
Right.
Fanboys. That's right. Fanboys, fanboys. What you gonna do? Good. So we have the for and nor but or yet so. Very, very good. And those will join independent clauses. And then how do we attach a dependent or subordinate clause to the sentence? There are two types of things that we can use. So we have the www.asia.wub, when, while, where, as, since, if, although, whereas, unless, because. Do you remember what those are called? They're also on the conjunction chart, but they're not coordinating. What are they doing?
Yes. Just say it.
Subordinating. That's right. They're subordinating conjunctions. Very, very good. And the subordinating conjunctions, do we use those with adjective clauses or adverbial clauses? So remember, adjectives modify nouns or pronouns. So it's going to be relating back to a noun or pronoun in the independent clause and telling us more about it. Adverbial clauses do what adverbs do. They modify verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. You have 50-50 chance. If the subordinating conjunctions are either telling us more about, they're either telling us more about a noun or pronoun, or they're telling us more about a verb, adjective, or adverb. Do you remember? Roland? Do you remember? Subordinating conjunctions, what type of clauses do they introduce? Is it adjectival or adverbial? Let me go ahead and use the mouthful word. Try the other one. It's all right. Adverbial, that's right. So we use the subordinating conjunctions, the when, while, where, as, since, if, although, whereas, unless, because. We use those to introduce the adverbial clauses. What do we use then to introduce the adjectival clauses? Who, whom, whoever, whomever, whichever, what, whatever, and the list goes on. Do you remember what those are? What part of speech? Do you remember what part of speech they are? So they're either they are relative pronouns. Very good. I hear you guys, you're all afraid to answer. It's okay. They're relative pronouns. Relative pronouns introduce adjectival clauses. So here, again, here's a great way to remember which one is doing what. Adjectives modify what? Adjective modifies a noun or pronoun by describing, qualifying, or limiting. So if it's a relative pronoun that is introducing the clause, relating back to a noun or pronoun in the independent clause, it's going to be adjectival because that's the job of adjectives. They give us more information about nouns or pronouns. Okay? If it's subordinating conjunction, well, let's do this. What's the definition of an adverb? An adverb modifies a verb, adjective, or another adverb and answers the questions how, when, where, why, how often, how much, to what extent, under what condition. All right, we have a when in there. This is just a little tricky thing to help me remember. If an adverb is telling us when, is when also a subordinating conjunction? When, while, where? Yep. So try to make those connections, those little things to help you to remember the job of these different things, okay? Very, very good, guys. Let's move on then. So we looked at compound complex. We've reviewed what makes up a compound complex sentence. Now, last week we were reviewing some of our patterns that we've already done. We've done all the patterns, remember? We've done all of them. So now we're just going through and reviewing them. So I'm going to give you a sentence. All right, I gave you this sentence last week. Let's go ahead and pick it apart. The sentence says, I love to sing. Who or what is this sentence about? Who or what loves to sing? Yeah. I. Good. So I is the what? It is the subject. Very good. All right. I what? What does I do? I what? What is it saying about I? Arabella, what is it saying about I? Love. Very good. I love what? To sing. Very good. So there is something that I love. Therefore, what kind of verb is this going to be? You can answer the question, what? This is going to be a direct object then. It's receiving the love. So, is this verb transferring action or not transferring action? It is transferring action. So, it is a transitive verb. There we go. I love to sing. So, we reviewed this SVT-DO pattern. Now, what was the tricky thing? Roland, do you recognize this from last week?
Yep.
What is this, Roland?
Verbal.
It is a verbal. And what kind of verbal is this?
Infinitive.
It is an infinitive. Very good. Now, if you'll remember, if you've been working on chart D, we looked at the principal parts of verbs. Infinitives are one of those principal parts. An infinitive is to plus the verb. Now, to sing is a verbal in infinitive form. It is a verb in its infinitive form that is not being used as a verb. Okay? What is the function of to sing in this sentence? What did we label it as? We labeled it as a direct object. And what usually functions as a direct object? What part of speech? It's one of the usages of this part of speech. Roland, what usually functions as a direct object? What part of speech?
Nouns.
Nouns or pronouns usually function as the direct object. So this verbal, this infinitive, is being used in a noun form. So let's review that real quick. An infinitive, whoops, if I can spell correctly, an infinitive is to, the word to, plus a verb used as a noun, and here we see it was used as a noun, adjective, or adverb. So when you see to sing or to play or to ride or to plus a verb, it is in its infinitive form, and then you need to look at what usage it is playing in the sentence. If it is functioning as a noun, adjective, or adverb, then it is an infinitive, it is a verbal infinitive. Yes, verbal infinitive. All right. So continue. Now, just a reminder with the first years, work on your charts, review the definitions of these things, Mom. But the main thing to focus on are the structure and reviewing the patterns. But yes, definitely touch on the different forms, on the verbal forms. And then second years and third years, I hope that you are able to start making these connections and maybe even come up with some sentences where you're using the verbal infinitive or infinitive verbal. A verbal, I'm going to stop right there, where you're using this in different ways.
Are you willing, do you have time to diagram it?
Yes, I can diagram it.
We also had a question on a sentence from, it's technically 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
We're doing that later, way later. But.
Sure. So you follow the SVT-DO pattern, but with the infinitives, they're going to have a line similar to a prepositional phrase, but it's going to be on, it always looks like chicken feet to me, but it could be stilts, but they're going to be up. They're going to be raised up a bit. And then you put the infinitive, or you put the to, on the slanted line, and then you put the verb on the straight line. So, and even as last week, and I goofed up on when it says an adjective, even if it's below the main line for the pattern, you're still going to use the stilts in order to diagram it. And now if I did, To sing is fun, and to sing was the subject of the sentence, then I would use the same form, but it would be in the place of a subject. So it would be to sing is fun. All right, but why would I diagram it that way if I said to sing is fun? What kind of diagramming is that? Does anybody recognize it? I've got, what do you see it to be? Go ahead. What is it?
They have it.
They have it? Are you willing to answer? Which pattern do we, go ahead, Roland, which pattern do we diagram this way, or which possible patterns do we diagram this way?
SVLPA.
Okay, this is an SVLPA. Very good. Excellent. And that actually brings us into this week's content. So, a segue I wasn't counting on. Here we go. You put this chart down. We're going to move on. This week, we're going to continue with the compound complex structure, but we're going to be reviewing the next set of patterns. And those are the wrong notes, so excuse me one second while I grab this. Okay, here's my sentence. My dog is a mastiff. Okay. My dog is a mastiff. Who or what is a mastiff? What does it say in the sentence? Who or what is the mastiff? Arabella, what's the subject of this sentence? Dog. Very good. Dog is the subject of this sentence. Now, what about dog? Dog what? Is. Okay. Now, hopefully, this is sending off a flag or bells or something in your mind. Is. Okay. Do you remember do, does, or am, are, is, was, were, be, being, been? What are those, guys? Am, are, is, was, were, be, being, been. Oh, hearkening back. Think foundations last year, but we've been reviewing them this year. Yes, Roland?
Be verb.
All right, is one of the be verbs. Now, be verbs are tricky because you can use be verbs in two different ways. Be verbs can either be linking verbs or they can be helping verbs. So let's look at this sentence. My dog is a mastiff. Is the word is followed by another verb? I'm seeing heads shaking no. What do you guys think? Is the word is followed? You're right. It is not followed by another verb. It's not helping another verb. My dog is a mastiff. Is there something else in the sentence then that's either renaming or describing the subject?
Yeah.
There is. My dog is what? Mastiff. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and label this as a linking verb. The next thing we need to figure out, do we have a predicate nominative, a PN, or do we have a predicate adjective, a PA? Is the dog being renamed or is the dog being described? And maybe this little word right here can help you. What is the word Arabella, do you remember what is? It is an article adjective. Key on adjective, and what do adjectives modify? It's a noun or pronoun. So a or a mastiff. Mastiff is a noun. All right, so there was a very good clue right there in this sentence to help us know that this is a predicate nominative. Very, very good. This week, we will be reviewing the SVL-PN and the SVL-PA. And don't worry, we'll get in some SVL-PAs. So, very good, SVL. Now, what is my? Real quick, we know this is an article adjective, so we can say article adjective. What is my? How are we going to label my? Whose dog? My dog. It's telling us who the dog belongs to. So what is it? A possessive pronoun. You want to finish it? Adjective. You are right. So it's a possessive pronoun adjective, sometimes labeled a PPA. I like to just call them adjectives and then make sure you know what kind they are. But yes. Excuse me, we have a possessive pronoun adjective and an article adjective in this sentence. Very, very good. Let's move on to our next sentence then to help us continue on with this discussion. And I'll keep the theme going. You guys all know who I'm talking about. Who's the dog that's a mastiff? Is it Penelope? Yeah, she's a big old sweet dog, isn't she? All right. So my dog is, I forgot to ask you. My dog is a mastiff. What was the structure of that sentence? I'll write it again. What's the structure? Think of buildings. You have either simple, compound, complex, or compound complex. Arabella, what is the structure of this sentence? My dog is a mastiff. Is it simple, compound, complex, or compound complex? Do you see a fanboy? Do you see a subordinating conjunction? Or a relative pronoun? Then what is it? Olivia, do you know? Simple is correct. Very, very good. Simple. And what was the purpose? What's the purpose of the sentence? Remember, the purposes are declarative, imperative, exclamatory, or interrogative. It's a declarative sentence. Very good. So it's a simple declarative sentence. All right, let's look at our next sentence then. She was a sweet puppy. Oh, I'm sorry, I left out a word. She was a sweet little puppy. But, nope, sorry, which, I was looking at the wrong one, became huge. All right, she was a sweet little puppy which became huge. Let's identify the structure of this sentence. Is it simple? Is it compound? Do you see a fanboy? Is it complex? Do you see, I see excitement. Okay, why do you think it's complex? It has a which clause. Very good. You recognize that from IEW. Good. Now, what is which, though? What is which? Where does that fall? We talked about with complex sentences, you're either going to use relative pronouns or subordinating conjunctions. So, what is which? Or think about it this way. Which is referring back to what? Which is replacing what in order to avoid repetition? Who became huge? It is. It's referring back to she. It's telling us more about she. I use the pronoun she here. I didn't use her name. She was a sweet little puppy. She became huge, but I replaced it with the relative pronoun which. Now, so then, since this is a relative pronoun, what kind of clause is this? We already know it's dependent or subordinate. Is it adjectival or adverbial?
to look at what the whole clause describes, what it's describing?
Yeah, well, and just the first word can help you. Relative pronouns are going to introduce either adjectival or adverbial clauses. And if it's an adjective clause, it's telling us more about a noun or pronoun in the independent clause. So which is referring back to she. She is a pronoun. So what modifies nouns or pronouns? Roland, what modifies nouns or pronouns?
Adjectives.
Adjectives do. This is an adjectival or adjective dependent clause. Very, very good. She was a sweet little puppy which became huge. All right, so we know we have a complex sentence. What is the purpose of this sentence? What's the purpose? Declarative, very good, declarative purpose. Let's identify the patterns then. We already know this is a relative pronoun. That's a pronoun in a clause. Clauses have subjects and verbs. Which is the subject? Which what? What happened to which? Which what?
Yes, please say it.
I heard her whisper it. Became is our verb. Okay. Which became what?
What did she become?
Huge. Is huge receiving action? Did which do something to huge?
Which do something? Yes or no?
This might be tricky. This might be a slightly tricky question. Which didn't do something to huge? Huge is telling us more about which. Okay? So then let's ask this question. Does huge rename which? Or does it describe which? What do you think, Michaela? Does it rename which or does it describe which?
Describe.
I would agree with you. I would say it describes which. Good job, Michaela. This is our linking verb and huge is a predicate adjective. Now, this was a little tricky. This isn't a linking verb we use very often. Do you guys remember the list? This is a good time to review the list of linking verbs. A linking verb makes an assertion by joining two words. A linking verb makes an assertion by joining two words. Feel, become, remain, taste, seem, appear, look, sound, stay, smell, grow, be. MRs was, were, be, being, been. These are the linking verbs. I know somebody else has altered that tune to fit the be verbs in better, but that's okay. It's so stuck in my head that way. So, yes, become, became, still fits under become, even though it says feel, become, became is the same word. You just alter it according to the subject, according to the person. All right, so we've been SVLPA. Let's look at the independent clause now. She was a sweet little puppy. Who was a sweet little puppy? She. She what? She was. She was what? Oh, we have a lot of words in there. She was what? A sweet little puppy. All right. Which one of those words do you think we need to focus on? Is referring to what? Arabella? Is referring to what? She was She was a sweet? What, like a cake or a piece of candy or something yummy to eat? She was, okay, puppy. Is referring to puppy. Very, very good. What about sweet? Sweet is doing what? Well, we know she wasn't a sweet. What was sweet? Puppy was sweet. What about little? What was little? was little. You're right, it's an adjective. All three of these words then, all of them are referring forward. They're telling us more about puppy. These are all adjectives. Is an article adjective. And then sweet and little are single. So we have sweet and little. Puppy. All right, puppy. Is it renaming she or describing she? Go ahead, focus on this word. We had an article adjective. So what is puppy? Go ahead, Olivia.
Renaming.
It is renaming, and we know that it is a noun because it has that article adjective in front of it. So we have a predicate nominative. So this sentence has an SVL PN and an SVL PA. And it's a complex sentence. Very good. All right. Let's review with one more sentence, or let's move forward with one more sentence. And I'm going to need room. What about this sentence? My dog, which is very, keep skipping words. A very large mastiff looks intimidating. But she is quite loving. Ooh, that's a long sentence. Okay. What do you notice about this sentence, Arabella? Well, do you want to tell us what structure this sentence is? It's compound complex. And what were the clues in the sentence that led you to that conclusion? Can you say that louder, please? Well, do you see any words or punctuation or anything that would help you to conclude that this is a compound complex sentence? What about you, Roland? Any words or punctuation that lead you to conclude this is a compound complex sentence?
There's a ton of commas and a lot of conjunctions.
There are a ton of commas. I don't see a whole lot of conjunctions. I do see one. Where do you see a conjunction? But. But is a conjunction. For and or but, or yet so. What kind of conjunction is but? Go ahead. Coordinating, good. And so we use coordinating conjunctions to join clauses in what type of structure sentence? Yes. So we know that this is probably compound. Now, what would be our clue that this is complex? It is followed by a clause. She is quite loving. We have a subject and verb and more information. What would be our clue then that this is also a complex sentence? Think IEW. It does have a which. And what do we know about which? What did we say which is? What kind of word? What part of speech? It's not a conjunction. It's not a conjunction. Remember, complex sentences can either have subordinating conjunctions or relative pronouns. It's a pronoun. It's a relative pronoun. Very, very good. Excellent. Okay, and which is is a clause there. It has, remember, in order to be a true clause, it has to have subject and a verb. So let's break this apart. Can somebody tell me, go ahead and pick one of the independent clauses. We know this is compound complex. What is the purpose? What is the purpose of this sentence, Arabella? It is declarative. Very good. Pick one of the independent clauses, Arabella. Roland, will you pick one of the independent clauses? Which one should we focus on first?
My dog looks intimidating.
My dog looks intimidating. All right, very good. What is the subject of that clause? What looks intimidating?
The dog.
Dog. Good. Dog what? Looks. Is the dog looking at a cat or out the window? No. My dog looks what? Okay, hold on. I know you're trying to figure out, we're working on it, figuring out what kind of a verb. My dog looks what? Intimidating. Good. Is intimidating renaming dog? Is intimidating describing dog? It's describing dog. Good. This is a linking verb then. Feel, become, remain, taste, seem, appear, look, sound. Intimidating then is our predicate adjective. We'll talk about what intimidating is in just a moment because it's more than just a predicate adjective. Okay, so we have an SVL PA pattern. We have our possessive pronoun adjective. What should we do next? The dependent clause or the other independent clause?
Your choice.
My choice?
Yes.
Are you guys tired?
Yes.
Every teacher.
What if I have you come up and label one of them?
Oh.
You want to come up and label one of these? No? Could you at least label the subject and the verb?
I could, but
Yeah, come on up here. Label us.
Go for it.
It doesn't matter if it's the dependent clause or the other independent clause. Come label something. All right. Label the subject and the verb, or if you want to label the whole pattern in one of those, go for it. Okay. Subject linking verb. Very good. Don't look at my face, just label it. Are you worried about whether you're right or not? It's okay. You know what is. Just label it as an adjective. Okay, I have one quick question for you. I'm going to correct this real quick by asking you a question. This is telling us how loving she is, right? And loving is an adjective, so what modifies adjectives? Good. Now, she is not a very mastiff. She is a very large mastiff. So very is telling us how large. So what is very? Very, very good. All right, you got it. Excellent. Good job, Roland. Yep, got to throw those adverbs in because adverbs don't modify just verbs. They modify adjectives and other adverbs. Yes. All right, very, very good. So we have an SVLPA, we have an SVLPA, and we have an SVLPN in this compound complex sentence. Whew. Should we diagram it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before we diagram it, I would like you to take a quick look at your verbal chart, chart Q. Olivia, can you get your verbal chart, chart Q?
Oh, okay.
All right, maybe I'll do it when they get back. Lost 2 of my students. I'll wait till they get back. I'm just going to go ahead and start diagramming this, and then we'll talk about the next verbal real quick. All right, so we have dog is mastiff. It's our predicate nominative. I'm going to go ahead and diagram the coordinating conjunction first. Move these over here. Our coordinating conjunction goes on a straight line. Remember, we go down from the verb, dotted line down, straight line across, write your conjunction on the line, dotted line down. Now when you start putting out the platform for the second independent clause, you're going to want to make sure it lines up so that your verbs are going to connect. So she is, and I'm going to wait on loving for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and put a large. Oh, I just messed myself up. I'm trying to remember.
Oh, the adverb goes?
Yeah, the adverb. I knew I was going to throw something in there that I would forget. Okay. And then, because which is introducing an adjectival clause and is telling us more about the subject, we're going to do a dotted line down from the subject, which is the subject of its clause. So which will be in the subject spot, which is, oh, you know what? My eyes caught the wrong things. Oh, good thing I caught it now. So dog is mastiff. That was in the wrong spot. Pardon me, because my eye got stuck on the adjectival clause. So dog looks, that was our verb for this one. Dog looks. And we'll get to intimidating. So which is mastiff? A large berry. Okay. Now, let's look at these words for just a minute. Intimidating and loving. What do these words have in common? You see anything about the letters themselves? What do these words have in common? Intimidating, loving. What do you notice, Roland? Do you notice anything that they have in common?
Say it.
The ing. Yes, they have a similar ending. Very good. Let's look at chart Q real quick. We've already talked about infinitives that are verbals. Drop to the bottom of the chart. Let's look at participles. Roland, can you share the chart with your sister so she can see it too, please? Chart Q on verbals. All right. A participle is a verb, usually ending in ed, en, t, or ing, used as an adjective. Now, what was the function of intimidating and the function of loving? Both of them were functioning as predicate adjectives. They were both functioning as adjectives. Intimidate, you can say to intimidate. Loving, love, the root word, these are verbs. But in these sentences, they are not functioning as verbs. They are functioning as adjectives. So they're filling the role of a verbal. And in this case, they don't start with, it's not to intimidate or to love. They're not in infinitive form. They've been given a different ending. In this case, it's the ing ending. They are functioning as participles. Participles are diagrammed on a curved line. So we're going to curve a line and give it stilts. For intimidating, and we're going to curve our line and put it on stilts for loving. Now, for second and third year essential students, I want to recommend a source on CC Connected. You can find it in the Essentials tier under week 22. First years, don't mess with this unless well, moms, take a look at it. It's interesting. But there's a really good source on there that a CC mom put together on participles. And it just goes through different ways that participles are used. Gives you all sorts of examples. It even talks about dangling participles and what those look like. And then it has practice sentences. It has practice sentences and it has their diagram included. So this can be a really great resource. And even for first years, it can be worthwhile to just take a look at participles in a couple more ways and what their uses might be. But I just wanted to recommend this resource, and it is available on CC Connected under week 22. And you'll find it with all of the other resources that are there. You can be very thankful that they've included so many wonderful things for parents to use at home to help augment their teaching of this material. So this week it recommends to review all the charts. You will definitely want to review chart Q on verbals. You should review chart P on the model sentences for the compound complex, but it can also be a great benefit to review chart L on adjectives, to review the definition of adjectives, to review the different types of adjectives. And this can be a fun week with your sentences to go ahead and add in a lot of adjectives and give them a lot of practice there with those. All right, are there any questions on compound complex or adjectives or verbals? Lord willing, I diagrammed everything correctly and explained everything correctly.
Just curious, where would quite go for loving?
Oh, thank you, you're right. So quite would go under loving, because it is modifying loving. The one that tripped me up was the very, because I haven't run into those very often, so I couldn't remember. No pun intended. I couldn't remember exactly how to do that, but thankfully there are great examples in the guide. If you do get stuck on any sentences, they do have examples all over the place to look at. But you're right, quite would go under loving. All right, good. Now I'm sorry guys, we're not going to play any math games today. But I wanted to put in a plug for classical conversations materials in particular, because these have been, one of them we haven't used quite as much, although it has great ideas, especially if you're starting to run out of what to do. But these multiplication flashcards, if you don't already have these have been a really great resource, especially for students that are going for Memory Master. These have been invaluable in our family. And then they've also been really great for Essentials Community Day. I've played some fun games with these. I wanted to recommend the tables, squares, and cubes, because moms, especially now that we're all kind of stuck at home most of the time, and schoolwork is getting a little dicey on some days, at least at my house. This is something that's really nice. You can just open it up. I put all of my pages in page protectors, and they can use a dry erase marker, and it gives them really great practice with all of the multiplication. It goes 1 through 15, and it also has the squares, and it also has the cubes. So it has all the answers in this section, and then keeps it in order on this side. So those who are still just doing skip counting, hopefully it can help them start making the connection. But then on the flip side of the page, it mixes it all up. So it's not in order anymore, and so it helps them to just recognize it and know it rather than just skip counting in their head. Sometimes that can take a while to overcome the skip counting and versus just being able to answer. So I just wanted to really recommend this. This has been a great addition to our homeschool, and those are available through Classical Conversations. And then the quick flip arithmetic, this is a great one. We have enough resources that I haven't can't talk today. I haven't gotten into this one too much, but this, especially if you have face cards, this is what this is for. And so it can give you a lot of good game ideas, everything from basic addition all the way up through a little bit more advanced math. And then of course you all have your board slam at home and some dice. That right there is fantastic. You want to just stick with that. But I just want to encourage everybody to make time for working on math at home in a fun way. And we're trying to do better about this in our house, but I must admit that we don't always make math fun. And so I'm hoping, especially with being on lockdown a bit, and we can incorporate more math games, and it improves their mental math so much. And that's the goal there. We want to improve not only their accuracy, but their speed. That's going to help them tremendously. All right, we are done with the EEL portion, and we are not going to do the math. Do you guys want to stretch for a minute? You want to get a drink of water?
Yes.
Go ahead. Now, if you're anything like our family, we still have some work to do on the Faces of History paper.
What was I supposed to do yesterday?
We'll talk about it later. But this is week 22. It is time to move forward, and moms, you are the teacher, so we've all been thrown into a bit of a spin. So we'll go through the new unit today, and most people aren't going to see it today anyway, so that'll give them time to get ready for it. And then we'll do the next thing when we're able to do the next thing. So moving into lesson 28, looking at unit 9, the critique model. So go ahead, if you have your book, open up to page 235, and let's take a look at that. Now this new unit is going to combine skills from 2 previous units that we've already gone through. And all of you have shown yourselves to be pretty savvy at understanding these units. So it shouldn't be too difficult to just incorporate them, but let's review a few things just to put it in this type of context. So let's read down through the information on page 235. The critique model. In this new unit, you will be combining the skills of the 2 previous units. You have learned the elements of a well-written story, the story sequence chart. Do you guys remember when you got to rewrite a story in your own words, or use the basic elements of the story and make a new story out of it? Well, you're going to use that story sequence chart again. You have learned to write conclusion and introduction paragraphs for essays. In this unit, you are going to use these skills to help you write critiques of literature. When you critique a story, you do not retell it in its entirety. Underline that or something. And I'll read it again. When you critique a story, you do not retell it in its entirety. Instead, this is the part, explain the most important aspects of the story based on the story sequence chart. Just enough so your reader can follow your discussion of your opinion. Isn't that fun? You guys get to have an opinion in this one. Come on, I know you all have opinions on things. You get to express your opinion of a story, of the story that is next in our book. So this will create a brief summary of the story. Think summarizing, you're summarizing the story, okay? I'm gonna write that on the board, just for the visual. Thank you, Mr. Pudua, for your summarizing. So you're going to retell some of the story, just enough, using the story sequence chart as your guide, just enough to give your reader an idea of who or what was in the story, when it took place, what the problem was, or the basic elements of the story, and then how it played out, what happened in the story. You're just going to give a very brief overview of it. All right, I'm restating that over and over. Yeah.
Is that this, like, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5? This is the...
Yep, we're getting to that. And I have visuals and stuff all marked out so that we can go over it.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to just really stress that, because the tendency, and I've noticed this in my previous years of doing essentials, it's easy to fall into the trap of just retelling the whole story. And you will to a certain extent, but I can't stress enough, it's not the whole thing. You're just giving the main points of it. So this will create a brief summary of the story with the setting, characters, conflict, climax, and resolution clearly identified. Then you add a concluding paragraph in which you give your opinion about different aspects of the story. So in your conclusion, just like in our essays where you say what is most significant and why for your essay, in the critique, you're going to give your opinion of what you think about the story and why. You will tell what you like or do not like. Finally, you add an introduction paragraph to the beginning that gives some background information about the story and author. So, Unit 9 is going to follow the story sequence chart and also the elements required in the introduction and conclusion specific to these critiques. They give the overall model: introduction, setting, characters, conflict, problem, climax, resolution, conclusion. I want to refer you real quick. Your SRP, it gives you really good resource for this. It's a much larger visual. So on page 65, it has the critique model. So if you even want to put this up, you should have it in your student resource packet. It's going to give you really good ideas on what to do here. What I want to focus, well, let me go through the whole thing first. So your introduction, you'll have an attention getter, the type of story, the title, and the author, and you'll give some background information. We'll go into that more in a little while. In the story sequence here, this is where paragraph 1 is going to give us the characters or setting, any people or animals in the story, the place, time, and mood. Paragraph 2 is the conflict or problem, problems that must be solved, or the plan of the story. And then paragraph 4, am I saying the right numbers for the paragraphs? I just started thinking. Anyway, paragraph 4 is the climax or resolution, turning point of the story and the outcome of the main characters. So follow that. Give yourself a little leeway, but try to adhere to those general things. So you can even say, this story is set, and start your first paragraph that way. The main problem of this story is, and start your second paragraph that way. The problem is resolved by, and start your third paragraph that way. You don't have to use those exact words, but I hope you get the idea. That's the main point of the paragraph. All right, let's look at the end of this on 235. I'm in the last couple of paragraphs. This model can be used to critique short stories, movies, novels, plays, TV shows, or anything that tells a story. An important part of a critique is the conclusion. Here you should tell what you like or dislike about the story without, you might want to underline this, without saying anything like, I think, or in my opinion. For example, if you say it is a suspenseful story with plenty of thrilling action, your readers will know your opinion, but it will sound much more convincing than this. I think it is a good story. In fact, don't say good. That's a banned word. So you're going to have to use better adjectives than good or bad. Last paragraph on this page. When you write a critique, the body paragraphs have clear opening sentences for setting, conflict, and climax, but they do not have clinchers. So underline that, underscore that. This is because the paragraphs move through the events of the story as each element of the story sequence chart is discussed. Don't have to worry about clinchers, guys. Don't have to worry about clinchers. Okay, go ahead and turn to the next page. Your source text then for this week is Genghis Khan and his hawk. This story might make you sad. So we will not read through it today. You can read through this with your mom at home. But go ahead and turn to the next page and take a look. There are some great things here to help you get your keyword outline. And you will notice that this week, for the critique, you are only doing the body paragraphs. All right, so that is the goal for this week. And after doing the Faces of History paper, this might actually feel somewhat easy because you're not researching anything. You don't have to look at different sources and make fused paragraphs. So they give you really, really good prompts here to help you with each paragraph to make your keyword outline. Characters and setting. Describe the time and place the story occurs. This is the setting. Name and describe each main character. So that's paragraph 1. Paragraph 2 is the conflict or problem. State the main problem of the story. In other words, what does the main character want or need? Identify this as the conflict. Tell what the main characters do, say, and think in order to solve the problem, if the story gives you that information. Tell how the characters feel as they try to solve the problem. Then paragraph 3, climax and resolution. What event in the story reveals how the conflict will work out, whether or not the problem will be solved or not? Identify this as the climax. What is the outcome for the main characters at the end of the story? Identify this as the resolution. So there are your prompts for each paragraph. And moms, you'll notice in your teacher edition, when you look at it at home or wherever, that this is a great opportunity. Pull out that thesaurus and use some really good adjectives. You're telling about a story. So this is a wonderful opportunity to really beef up their vocabulary and use some great adjectives in here. They give, and moms, they do give some good examples of adjectives on the side in the teacher edition. All right, so this week it's just the body paragraphs. Next week we'll be looking at introduction and conclusion. The introduction for the literary critique or the formal critique is slightly different from the introduction that we have been using with our essays, but not much. And again, you'll want to write, and we'll talk about this more next week, but you'll write your conclusion first and then go back and do your introduction. But this week, just focus in on those 3 body paragraphs. And please use your student resource packet. So the student resource packet has this overview outline that you can refer to. It can be a great visual to use at home. It also has a page on the formal critique process for fiction. It does recommend read about the author. You don't need to worry about that for this particular assignment. But if you decided to do a formal critique on your own, just for extra practice or for fun, that could be something that you could incorporate. And it just gives you a little bit more information in another way. the more exposure we get to it, the better it can help us to understand. But this critique thesaurus on page 68 might be especially of benefit to you. It gives you different words for story. Is this a tale, a saga, a narrative, and so forth? Different words for type, for characters. Are they players, actors, heroes? So it's going to give you a wealth of words to use to mix things up in your critique. So this can be a really great resource to refer to. And I said pulling out a thesaurus, this page might be all you need. This can be a big help to you in that. And that's in the SRP. Now, IEW is always great about giving us examples to look at. There is an example on page 69 of a fiction critique. It's 69 and 70. You can read through that and see how they put their story together. And the other thing I wanted to refer you to, just in case it's helpful with this critique model, would be your twist guide, your teaching, writing, structure, and style. If you're still struggling or you just want to make sure you understand, this is another resource that you can turn to on page 147. So I should probably write these page numbers on the board instead of just saying them verbally. Let me give
So these are just places to find examples.
Yeah, these are places to find examples and just refresh your memory on what this is all about. So in the SRP, or the Student Resource Packet, it begins on page 67 and so on. This is where you'll find the information for the formal critique. I should probably erase this if it's distracting. Bless you. And then in TWIS, or the Teaching, Writing, Structure, and Style, the formal critique begins on page 147. One quick distinction that I found helpful, and Andrew Pudawa touched on this in Unit 9 when we watched the DVDs. He talks about why teaching, just real brief, teach students to critique. A book report just reports. A critique analyzes and makes a recommendation about the book. Teach students to avoid use of the first person, I think, I feel, in my opinion, I believe, my suggestion, etc. They should speak their opinion as if they were an expert. So there you go, guys. You get to be experts on this story. All right. Another important distinction, for what it's worth, they say that a book report does not summarize the book. It describes certain components of the content, but not all. The student should understand that he is not responsible to relate every character or detail. Stress the main things. So that's why I keep stressing that. You're not going to retell the whole story, only stress the main things. So feel free to refer to the critique models in Unit 9, but stick with the fiction examples because that is what you guys are working on. And then again, it has a critique, well, it's the same critique thesaurus in the TWIS. But there are more examples to read through there. They have upper elementary and 6th grade examples in there that may be very helpful as you figure out how to do this. All right, any quick questions? Because just the body paragraphs this week. Any questions about a formal critique? Do you want to take a quick look at the story sequence chart? That might be helpful. The story sequence chart, if you want to refer to that, just to help you get through these body paragraphs, that was Unit 3. So if you want to refer to the story sequence chart, because it's mentioned in the SRP, I'll write it down, story sequence chart. That is on page 21. And that gives you just the story sequence chart. If they're having trouble pulling out information, that might be helpful. Paragraph 1, who is in the story? What are they like? When does it happen? Where do they live or go? Paragraph 2, what do they need or want? What do they think? What do they say and do? Paragraph 3, how is the need resolved? What happens after? What is the message or lesson? So that may be helpful in working on those body paragraphs. All right. I have found that often if you don't like the story, the formal critiques are more interesting. So I would be curious what you guys think of the story. So I'll probably be asking you next week what you thought of the story. And maybe that'll help you to generate your opinion paragraph. Yeah, we're going to use that story. Although for you, I think you already know the story. I might have to pick a different one for you. We'll go over it at home, just to be sure.
I could pick one I don't like, a book I don't like, to make it more interesting.
I just mentioned that because it's funny with my own students. They have so much more to say if they don't like something than if they do like something. Oh, it was good. But if it wasn't, if they didn't like it, then they have much more. That's kind of long. All right, any other questions or comments about the formal critique? Okay, I guess we're good.
Great.
I guess we're good.
Done.
Yeah, we'll call it done.